Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Leadership and Politics. I'm very excited for this episode because I have with me New York Times bestselling author Ron Kaufman. Ron, welcome. Thank you for making the time to be with me.
Pleasure to be here with you and with your audience.
Excellent. So let's talk about what you've been doing all these years and for generation, Uplifting Service. Do you have it with you? Uplifting Service, the book?
I don't have the book with me.
Let's see.
There you go.
Here you go. This is the magnificent. This is the Bible of service, of customer service. Tell me, why has it been for all these years? It has 5-star reviews, right? It's been providing insights for others. Why? What's the magic of this book? What did you do there?
When I started working in the field of service really deeply, Abe, I could find many case studies of outstanding service performance. Singapore Airlines, for example, Changi International Airport, because I'm based out here in Singapore. But at the time, it was also American Express or the Ritz-Carlton Hotel or Disney, and yet they're in completely different industries. And so what I did was I wanted to look more deeply into how did they create these cultures, not only of outstanding service performance, but continuous service improvement. Because part of what made all of these leading brands and services is that they weren't static with established service standards. They were consistently improving. And so I actually teased out, what is it that's required, regardless of the industry, to architect, if you will, the construction of an uplifting service environment, so that when people come to work every day, they're educated, communicated with, recognized, encouraged, enabled, supported, empowered, led in ways. And that entire methodology is what I ended up writing about in the book and have now been helping large global organizations do over the past 3 decades.
So you really provided the model of care.
An implementation model.
Implementation model. It's an action called model. You have serve, care, and love. These are your motto, really, your logo, what you live by. Why do people care? Why do we have to serve?
Let me go backwards a little bit. Give your audience a little bit of background. My grandmother taught kindergarten for 40 years.
Okay.
And at one point, she was named one of the top teachers in New York City.
Nice.
And she only had one child, my dad. But he had 5 kids. So it was like a private kindergarten. And I used to get the privilege of going to her kindergarten. I was even younger than the kindergarten kids.
Nice.
And I watched her love every single child, which is why ultimately she was named such an incredible educator.
Is your role model?
She was my role model for love.
Okay.
Just really everybody deserves it. You can live your own life in a way that really loves and takes good care.
Okay.
When I came to Singapore in 1990, actually, before that, I got involved in ultimate frisbee when I was in college. You know the sport.
Yeah.
I'm in the Ultimate Frisbee Hall of Fame.
Nice.
Because at the time that the sport was being created, I was one of the Johnny Appleseeds that took it not only to college, but took it around the world.
Good for you. Yeah.
And the first rule is called the spirit of the game. And the spirit of the game says that the people who are on the field playing the game are responsible for the quality of play and the experience of play. No referee. And that's really, I think, where I learned care.
This was
you have to actually care.
Yeah,
you have to care about your opponent,
mm-hmm.
care about the community and the spectators, and etc. And then I came to Singapore in 1990, and that's where I really learned what is service, and defined it as service as taking action to create value for somebody else. And then I ended up teaching all over the world. In fact, I just pulled these out recently. These are my passports.
Wow.
Just how much implementation of this.
You traveled. You coined a new term for care.
Well, it's interesting that the phenomenon of care, I used to define service as taking action to create value for someone else. Worked very well for 30 years. And then I realized, the kind of service I'm really committed to, it can't just be someone else. And so I rewrote it as service is taking action to create value for someone you care about. Ooh, but that raised the question, what is care?
Yeah.
And care, it turns out, was as much confused and abstraction as service was when I met it 30 years ago. So I really started digging in, Abe, and saying, hold on a second, let's deconstruct this. Let's reconstruct this from fundamental. And what care is it's concern, like I care, but it's concern with commitment. I'm concerned and I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to take care. And it's concern and commitment to someone or something's well-being, which means then, like when you think about your kids, you care about your kids, but not just in this moment, you care about them into the future as well. So the full definition really would be care is concern and commitment to future well-being. Yes, in the moment, but the moment just became the past.
Yes.
So I'm actually devoted to your, well, how do you take care? You have to put your commitment into action. Oh, yes, that's the service part. So these two are very, very closely connected. Now, I realize this is not being taught in school. What's missing? How could this not such a fundamental answer to what it is to be human with other people as social creatures? How can this not be taught? And what is it that's not being taught? And I realized that the world of care had been captured either by healthcare or by philosophers.
Okay.
And that wasn't adequate for you and me and most of our listeners.
Most people are not there. Exactly.
So I started developing a curriculum that would help to answer the question, what does it really mean to be human? Why is it that we care about what we care about? How do you get clear about what matters to you? And then how do you take good care and appreciate and respect the how and why other people care about what they care about? And so I got deeper into the field. I looked for it. It wasn't in sociology. It wasn't in philosophy. It wasn't in anthropology. It wasn't. So I invented the word Careology.
Careology.
And found that it didn't already exist.
And
so I'm now building the curriculum and writing the book.
And it does entail what you just defined and covered. It does entail that, which is a good thing. What resonated with me as you're talking is the compassionate leadership, which is a model I'm really advocating for, is where you serve others and you care for them and make sure you add value to the consumer and the customer. And you, my friend, my new friend, you have been, for 5 years, you've been named Global Guru for customer service. Number one. That makes you humble.
4 years so far.
4 years so far. So let's.
I find it
for the 5th one. Yeah.
I find it entertaining. It's like, of course I'm grateful that the recognition happens, but it only happens because people are actually getting benefit and value and results. And that's what I feel good about.
And I want to bring a point here to leaders. If you help others, it doesn't mean you're losing. You actually thrive through this help, correct? So we advocate for them, hey, be there of service to others, because at the end, you're also benefiting. There's
2 aspects. There's 2 aspects of that. The pure in the moment, or it may come later, reflective value is what I call the joy of serving.
Yes.
The incredible gift you get when you give. But it may not be one for one. It could be that you serve somebody and they give you this big smile and a compliment and you feel good and the joy of serving comes back right away. But I think when we understand ourselves as a social phenomenon, rather than as isolated, separated phenomenon, then we realize that if I engage in a way that you feel cared for, taken care of, you feel good, you feel understood, you feel appreciated or admired, that feeling for you, that's part of me too.
I see.
Even if I don't have to count it right now.
I see. You're talking about the human connection here.
Yeah, what the phenomenon of being human is.
What the phenomenon of being human
We are social.
And it's not defined or even taught at any level unless you go to a church or a mosque or a temple or,
It's a good question. All
synagogue.
of our spiritual traditions recognize the mystery of life. The spirituality is invented because we're trying to make sense of why are we here?
Mm-hmm.
What is this thing called birth and death? Let's sanctify marriages and other phenomenon. Let's create a narrative in which we as a community can connect and experience this mysterious sense of amazement at being alive and being together.
Create a culture of sort, and from that norms and of the culture we live by, and we adapt and we move on. So let's go.
But don't, before we run away from that, when you said the norms of the culture, you named a series of monotheistic and also pluralist. Like when you look at Hindu, there's 33 million gods.
Yes.
Okay?
They have too many deities.
So what's happened is all of these cultures have evolved their traditions. But what we're addressing is the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
and
phenomenon
that
that belongs to all.
Yes.
that belongs
And
to all.
all over time as well, that there's mortality understood and woven into the narrative of all of our religious practices, all our
Yes.
traditions,
Yes,
birth,
yes, yes.
death.
True.
Whereas capitalism is more what's your quarterly result.
Let's talk about capitalism. And we live in a capitalist society
We
and
do.
societies. And humbly, I am advocating for the remaking of the new capitalist. This new capitalist I'm envisioning, and I wrote about it already, is someone who cares, someone who has compassion, empathy, and he sees others as part of his plan for success and fortune. He or she can, or they can be fortunate, but they also have to consider the wellness of others. You, when you serve, care, and love, you actually in the same, actually, probably you're leading the pact here. You're leading the pact is of creating this individual leader that cares. And it's proven what you just said. If they care for others, they actually win too.
You could care about the well-being of spiritual traditions of humanity and our ability to get along with each other and not use that as the basis of religious war.
Yes.
Okay. Number two, when we're kind of working backwards, you could care about ecological well-being because the niche in which we live, our planet, is required for us to continue to survive. I'm not saying anything new. All that's really changed is that the whole planet has woken up to the real phenomenon of the climate crisis that we've created and we're now going to be living into. Okay. So then ecologically, if you're going to be a successful capitalist, you need to stop thinking about it in terms of just extraction of resources and rather a contribution back into increased sustainability. So it's not just zero carbon, but it's actually what are you doing to replant the forest or to actually revitalize the oceans exactly. Or actually to enable more healthy agriculture for human consumption, et cetera, or wildlife environment.
That's the new trend now. The old capitalists didn't think like this, and that's what we're advocating for. And hopefully more people and more companies would lead the way. Let's go back to the service. Tell me about the consumer, the customer. How do we add value to the customer?
So different people value different things.
Okay.
And the value that you provide, I call one of my frameworks, one of the tools that we've created is called the 4 categories of value.
Okay.
So one category, the first one, let's call it the primary product.
Okay.
In other words, the main reason people come to you for something.
Service or product.
So yeah, if you go to a doctor, it's for a diagnosis and treatment.
Sure.
Okay, that's the primary product. This show, for example, Abe, the primary product is an exchange of thought leadership that's going to be curated into a shorter segment so people get value for their time.
Yes.
Okay, primary product. And you can create more value or you can actually damage or destroy value, which would begin by understanding what is it that that recipient, as you call the consumer, what is it that they really want? What is it that they will value? Okay, but there's another category, which I call the delivery systems. So you and I, right now, you're delivering this and you're going to put it up online. And then the question is, how many different channels will it be available through? Can they find it on Apple Podcasts? Can they find it on Spotify? Do they have to go to your blog? Is it something that they can download onto their own device so that they can listen to it or watch it even if they're offline? That doesn't have to do with the actual product, does it? It's the delivery system.
The channel of communication.
You could create value by being convenient, flexible, easy to work with. You could actually you could damage value by being more confusing or not user-friendly.
Take Apple as an example, what they created and why they're friendly.
Yeah, it doesn't even come with an operating manual.
Not anymore. Mm-hmm.
It's intuitive, you figure it out, yeah.
So that's what you're leading to.
Yes, but the primary product is that you've got this device that allows you to do so much and it's in your pocket and it weighs so much and the screen size is this and the amount of storage is that, and that's the primary product. And then you've got this amazing delivery system of iTunes, et cetera, and the whole ecosystem of apps.
Do you think they think they're using your model when they think like that? Or you, well, you're humble enough. Okay, that's fine.
Remember, I found my model by studying success.
Okay, good.
It was, and yes, there have been many that have now used the model to create more success, but I distilled it from what was already there.
Yeah.
The third category is called service mindset.
Okay.
Or attitude. And Apple's a master of this. And what I mean is when you go to an Apple site or you get something, the tone of voice in the text is never rude. It's always helpful. It's always encouraging. It always has a friendly tone to it. If you go to an Apple store, you're walking into a temple of service mindset.
Sure.
People are smiling. The body language is good. It may be 100% your fault. Whatever it is that you did that happened, they're not going to make you feel that way.
That's very true, though. Experience tells us that too, yeah.
And the fourth and final category in this particular model is called the ongoing relationship.
Okay.
What is it that they're doing that's going to continue this with them and with you over time, rather than just solving the problem, completing the transaction, or selling the product? And you can create more value in all four categories. And different people value different things in all four categories.
So as a startup founder, a business owner, when you think of this customer, you really have to think of the value your product or service have to provide to them.
Absolutely. That's right.
So this is really part of the game. When you don't say, I'm going to sell a product, I'm selling a good, you have to also think what you bring to them, to the community you're serving as well. Is that something?
And in the competitive landscape.
And tell me about that. How do you do that?
Well, for example, when you say a startup, it's very different than running an ongoing business with an established customer base.
Yes.
So a startup needs to find some way to do something different and to a certain customer segment better.
Okay.
So they may say, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing, but cheaper. Some will say, I'm going to differentiate my business by creating an initial engagement with my client, but then I'm going to deepen this over time. And we're going to add more services or understand them and customize what we do for them more deeply, etc.
Okay. And that's the fourth, that's getting us into the fourth model.
That's the ongoing relationship category.
Ongoing relationship category. Okay, excellent. So tell me about Singapore. What makes Singapore the place to be? Now they're talking about Dubai or some other places, but Singapore definitely has something. What is it?
Sure. And when you say, let's say a place to be.
A place to be.
Okay, like, one of my colleagues lives in the United Arab Emirates.
Okay.
It's another place to be. Now let's look at what these two have in common rather than are we better or worse. Yeah.
Yes.
Both of them are small. Both of them are in historically very volatile neighborhoods.
Sure.
Both of them, therefore, have strong interest in cultivating as many friendships as possible.
Okay.
So therefore, both of them are interested in cultivating a kind of a collaborative environment. Now, Singapore especially, but over here in Asia Pacific, you've got Chinese and you've got Indians and you've got Malay and you've got Vietnamese and Laotians and Thai and Cambodians and Indonesians and Philippines and Chinese. You've got a whole neighborhood that historically is incredibly diverse and yet connected. So what can Singapore do? Singapore is so tiny.
Small. Yeah.
It's a little island with 5 million people. There's no hinterland. There's no agricultural base. There's, it's just people. So Singapore has literally created its identity to be one in which we want to add more value.
Okay.
I remember an old phrase I loved, if we can't be cheaper, we got to be better. And if we can't be better, we got to be cheaper. That's sort of the domestic version, but the global version, I think, is much more important. Where Singapore itself is very multiracial, very multi-ethnic, very multi-religious. And it was really established at the foundation of the nation. And Lee Kuan Yew was sort of the founding father who said, we got to all get along here, and we're going to do that by mutual respect. So all of the holidays are celebrated by everybody.
The reason I'm asking you those questions and I'm loving what I'm hearing from you, because you're talking about heterogeneous society, heterogeneous environment. An organization can very much, even an individual organization can very much benefit from a society in
Yes.
a country like this, because we're talking
Yes.
about exchange of ideas, a team, how a team can work, and how overall society can work. This is
Yep.
very, very, very insightful, Ron. And I'm glad, and I'm sure Singapore should be proud that you are part of it and being
I'm
there too.
I'm I'm honored to be able to make a contribution
Yeah, that's
and
wonderful.
grateful.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And we're grateful to you. I'm grateful to you for coming, sharing your insights with our audience. Anything else you want to add? Where can people find you? What?
Website is just my name. It's ronkaufman.com. And there's a lot of resources there that are available freely uh, because our intent is to contribute.
Yeah.
My personal motto is a life well lived contributes to the well-being of others.
Keep leading the pack. Where are we heading next? I'm not going to ask you about your next book or anything. Is there something you want to share about what you're doing in the future?
Well, the Careology work is afoot. It's
Okay.
it's cooking. We're working on it. We're outlining it. We're going deeper into not only the distinctions in terms of the curriculum that I've worked out, but what are the thoughts? What are the questions we want people to reflect on in each area? What are the actions to be able to take? What kind of observers do we want to produce for people of being human, of their own lives, in ways that leads not just to what am I going to do next, but leads to a better sense of compassionate understanding of others, that we really do live in a very pluralistic world.
Yeah.
One of my mentors runs an organization called Pluralistic Networks, and they have various courses that address a lot of this at a pretty serious level. I would like for everybody to think about their own lives and realize that being mortal, which is part of being human, you're not going to be around forever. So then what do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Mm-hmm.
And the old capitalist version of he who dies with the most toys wins, that's not terribly satisfying during the era.
It didn't work, no. It didn't work. It didn't serve us well. It provided no service, no care, and no love. And I end up
I
with
wouldn't
this.
say no. I wouldn't say no. But
Little.
let's just say we're in an era in which all of us are invited.
Exclusive for the few, and we're still living with it now. 2% win and own everything. Very scary. Serve, care, and love. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we haven't talked about in this call. Maybe another time. Tell me. When you talk about Xi Jinping, who says our focus is common prosperity. Now, I'm not asking, because we don't have time, to open up this whole issue about to what extent can people on the planet who grew up in different historical, different political, different spiritual traditions realize that we're all here and it's constantly evolving. 2%. And then you hear a concern like, well, how do we do this in a way that produces common prosperity? We've heard those things in the West as well. The question for all of us is, okay, let's get on with actually making it happen.
Actually make the action. At what age would you create this mindset of caring for others?
Remember, I got it.
Your grandma.
Kindergarten.
Your grandma.
I was 3 years old.
Tell me about your grandpa. What did your grandfather?
My grandfather, you've heard of the YMCA?
Sure.
Yeah, well, he ran the equivalent for Jewish kids back in that era. And remember, this was just post-World War.
Okay.
And so his job was to help keep kids off the street and out of jail.
My God.
By getting them in jobs or in school.
Exclusive kids or all kids?
The neighborhood. Anybody who walked into the Y. Anybody who got in trouble. Anybody whose parents had a problem. So the number of people who they helped to provide food and provide, childcare because the parents had 3 jobs to just try to put food on the table. Oh my God.
For the greater good.
Yeah. And my grandmother was teaching kindergarten.
Yeah. That's it. That's the stage. The home is the start, and what we pick up on at different religions, schools, education systems.
Very good.
It will build it on or off.
Touche. Now, that we have to accept that we have a human population right now where what people learned at home may have been more like, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who's in our tribe, who's outside. We have to reckon with that as a humanity, that says it's time for us to relook at our global traditions in all of their pluralistic manifestations with an underlying sense of how did it come to be that way that we all
Exactly.
share? And then with respect, find our way forward.
And this is how peace is really promoted. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Keep leading.
Thanks.
And we'll talk again.
Bless you. Just thank you all for watching and listening.